because the hero serves the same function like every single game, and there's no outplayability with it. Like you throw axes and then you throw a different looking set of axes, and that's kind of like the end all be all of the hero.
Mm-hmm. I do like the bans away from Not Today as well. They take away the Wisp as well as the Meepo, not letting Balkan Bears get their hands on it. Not even the possibility, right? We talked about, do you pick it up in the first 1-2? We saw Balkan Bears even pick it up in the 3-4, and it still didn't matter. But not today. They don't want to take any chances here. A lot of this is on the line here in this one game. They need to pull out a win up against Balkan Bears. They're basically fighting for their life in this tournament with this game. And taking a long time to think about their first pickup, but it is going to be the little lightning man himself, Zeus, first picked. Blitz, I've been feeling a little bit lackluster about these Zeus early pickups. I really don't. He's versatile hero and everything else, but it seems like I don't feel he contributes that much anymore, at least in this current tournament, right? In just a week ago, I would have said, yes, absolutely, Zeus, first pick, that's fine. He's versatile enough, he can fit anywhere. But it seems like in this tournament, we've had some pretty lackluster performances.
I think that the hero is still really strong, though. What it gives you is so much, right? You can D-ward with it. The ultimate is like the ultimate scouting tool. And I think some teams are just kind of picking it without realizing how you want to approach it. Like, I think the way that C9 run it actually is one of my favorites, where No Tail will play the Zeus, he'll run around with it, he'll D-ward like crazy, he'll set up kills with his ultimate, he'll focus on getting the level 6, he'll stack the jungle camps because the static field pulls the creeps as well. Like, that guy seems to really understand how the hero's supposed to be used, because it's not like a one-dimensional tool as you just use the ultimate, you know, you get some damage. You have to use all of these things in conjunction with each other to really get the full use out of it.
Mm-hmm. So in which case, maybe we just need to see a bit more coordination. C9 also have Fade on their team, who plays a really amazing Zeus as well if you run the core position Zeus, and I haven't been overly impressed by core position Zeus either. So Balkan Bears do like this opening pickup from them, though, the Axe and Dazzle as a nice little dual lane, no matter where they want to run it, whether it's a dual off lane or maybe they put the Axe in the one position and get that fast blink dagger. Either way, it's a nice opening. Still leaves you some options when it comes to the laning phase. Not today, though. We'll be going for the Lina here. So Lina most likely going to be our core position. This kind of locks Zeus into the support. Do you think I feel there's significant downsides to automatically showing, hey, the Zeus is going to be a support, because it's a hero that only puts out damage, isn't necessarily that strong when it goes to getting kills, right, at level 1, level 2. It's only until you get level 4 and 5 where that lightning bolt is actually a prevalent amount of damage. I think before that, Zeus is a decent harasser. He can stack, like you said, but it definitely leaves you very exposed to early engagements because you don't provide that much damage and you don't necessarily provide, well, you don't provide any disables.
Yeah, it could be a support Lina and a core Zeus. That wouldn't be...
It's possible.
I think you're right, though. I think the Lina should be a core, just because Lina does so well against a hero like Axe. If she has a little bit of farm, you ignore the armor. You just burst him down really quickly. Mm-hmm. Against the Dazzle as well, it's hard to grave when you can kill somebody from like 900 HP. Yeah. It's a little bit weird if you're going to... Do you really take that risk? Like, once a Lina gets an Aghanim, it's like, you see somebody at 900 health, and you're like, oh, yeah, I have to grave that? That's counterintuitive. Because most people try to min-max it. They're going to use it at the last possible second.
Right.
But against Alina and burst damage heroes in general, the leeway becomes, you have a lot less of it. And I do agree with the Axe and the Dazzle. I think it's really good. If you have a support Zeus, things get a little bit rough just because those two heroes can run you over and you don't really do too much. I guess
every bit of damage you put out with Arc Lightning early on is going to be counteracted by Shadow Wave, right? So it's just easy for the Axe. Like, the dual lane is not going to be forced out by the Zeus, I don't think, at all, if they choose to run that. I do like the fact they ban away the Smash Brewmaster. They also pick up the SF and Queen of Pain as bans for Not Today, taking away some of the most prevalent mid-heroes that would go up against Selena.
Yeah, definitely. And you see the Brewmaster and the Viper banned by BBC. I actually think that Not Today runs such a sick Brewmaster. Like, I think it's one of their most successful heroes. Mm-hmm. Smash plays it really, really well. I remember we played in a scrim against him, remember? That one time, like...
Yeah, I remember that.
We actually shut him out, and then his brew went ham on us. We ended up losing, but I think it's just a smart ban overall, especially if you have heroes like Axe and Dazzle. Dazzle against Brewmaster is rough. You can't stop him from splitting, and you just get tossed into the air every single time, and your tools or your skill set is completely useless at that point.
Right. Whether you Shallgrave a hero in time, but then they just Cyclone him up
Yeah,
and leave him
exactly.
for later, or you go for you Cyclone out the Dazzle specifically before he gets off anything. Either way, the Brewmaster is heavily a counter to the Dazzle, and in general, he's just going to be a good team fight winner, which is exactly what the Axe is looking for, right? He's one of those heroes that builds up. He gets the Blink Dagger, gets a couple of fights, and then he becomes just this team fight forcer, right? He's always the initiator, trying to get 2 or 3 man calls, and the Brewmaster actually outdoes the Axe oftentimes, unless you manage to burst down the Brewmaster first. Most of the time, if he gets off his ultimate in the first 20 to 35 minutes, that's a one team fight for you just by itself. So basically taking that option away from Not Today, they're now going to pick up the Lion for Balkan Bears. Again, I like that Balkan Bears, unlike day number 1, they're keeping their lineup much more hidden. Right,
Yeah.
both drafts that they've done today have basically both offlaners and both supports been picked up early on. They don't actually reveal their cards too early.
Yeah, I think that what they'll do, like most teams, is they'll probably run the Axe and the Dazzle together, maybe in the off lane,
Right.
depending, because Venge Zeus or Venge Lina aren't the best at dealing with that.
Mhm.
I actually really like the Lion pick from BBC, because I think something that they really missed in a lot of their drafts is they just had no damage from their supports. Like, think about what they had.
Rubik Dazzle,
Yeah, they had
super
Rubik, Dazzle,
defensive.
they had a Disruptor at one point.
Yep.
And it just feels that their supports can't have impact if the game goes poorly at all. Like, you can't rotate with those heroes. Like,
Mhm.
and that's what the issue was too. When we were, I think it was me and you or me and Toby were casting, and they picked up Dazzle and Rubik.
Yeah, that was
like
me.
where does the damage come from? Like,
Yeah.
what is?
You called it out. They needed to pick up the Dazzle, but it left them with
Yeah.
such a lackluster support duo that was so overly defensive they couldn't actually do much. The only time we saw them actually operate was, as you called it, the very lucky, very fortunate timing by Yapsor to rotate to mid, catch out Sumail as he was diving underneath the tower.
And I think that's what Balkan Bears really like right now, is that their drafts have been really lackluster this entire tournament.
Yep.
It just feels like something's off for them. Like, they might have doubted themselves after the first game, and they're thinking to themselves, okay, we have to make adjustments. What are we really doing here? And when you start to doubt yourself, especially your draft, and you move away from what you're comfortable with, things just become really chaotic. Like, you have no idea what you want to do anymore. Things that you used to do that were successful, if they're no longer successful in this tournament, then you're like, okay, we have to scrap that entire plan.
Yeah.
What's the next one? But I think I like their draft a little bit more this game. It's a lot more balanced. I think the Slark is going to go crazy this game. Like,
Yeah,
there's
it's
so
a good,
many
it's a
weak
good
targets.
game for a Slark. I mean, it's a little dangerous up against Lina, just making sure you don't get bursted right away. But if you are able to stay away from that burst damage, you should be able to gobble up most of these heroes. The Bristleback now picked up against the Axe Blitz. I mean, that is a scary prospect. That's a hero that forces you to fight him. We saw a lot of Legion Commander being picked up against Bristleback recently in the last 2 or 3 weeks for that exact reason, right? You force the Bristleback to turn and fight you, he's really not that scary of a hero at that point because he relies so heavily on that damage mitigation. Axe is just kind of a lower duration duel in that regard, that he's able to get that call, forces the Bristleback to face you, and then you can lay in a lot of damage. You know, even if you just continue to disable him up after that call is done, he's still forcing you to face him, even if you don't get a huge amount of burst damage, say. It's still forcing him to look at you while the Slark can, beat into him over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, too, the Bristle is a good answer to the Slark. It does well against the Lion if, you don't get called first. So there'll be a time period where I think the Bristle's actually going to be really strong. Because what does Slark actually do? Like, he pounces on you, you just turn around,
Right.
throw a bunch of quills while he's channeling his Shadow Dance. But I kind of agree with you in the regard to the Axe. The Bristle against the Axe, it's really rough. Like you said, the Culling Blade, it obliterates you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of burst damage too.